Hey, it's Gene Galin here with the Chatham Journal. I'm at Mary Holmes Hayes. Is it Mary Holmes Hayes?
Mary Hayes Homes.
Mary Hayes Homes. It's dyslexia. With Cindy Perry. Cindy's running for town mayor here in Pittsboro. Some of you people may recognize her because she's been town mayor before. Didn't run the last time, but she's running again. And of course, the first question I have to ask is, why are you running again?
Well, first of all, a lot of people ask me to run, and to me, the constituency is what's the most important thing here. The people of Pittsboro elect a mayor and town council, and I was delighted that people felt that my leadership had been sufficient and that they would ask me again to serve. I didn't run in 2019 because I wanted to do some work with the Second Bloom agency, which is our local domestic violence agency, and I felt that was something that was compelling and was going to fill my time. But then after we got moved over to the Food Line Shopping Center with our thrift store, I felt that I had time, and I certainly have the energy to complete another term, 2-year term. A lot of people, by the way, think that the mayor's job is a partisan job, but it's not. It's nonpartisan. So I welcome the endorsements and the support of Republicans and Democrats and unaffiliated voters in my run for this mayorship in 2021.
Actually, I'm going to jump to Second Bloom because you have done a lot with it. What have you been most proud of what you've been able to do with Second Bloom?
I must say that it came as a big shock to us that we were going to have to move out of the courthouse circle in last year, and it was with some trepidation that we thought about, well, where can we go? And I would have thought that the Food Line Shopping Center where we ended up would be way out of our price tag, but I must say that one of the things that I am the most proud of is that I negotiated a lease with the Food Line Shopping Center folks, and they were compelled by the idea that this thrift shop was looking for a home and looking for a larger space and had limited resources. And I'm very pleased to tell you that the property management folks have worked beautifully with us, given us a very reasonable rent, given us a 4-year lease with a very minimal increase, monthly increase each time the lease rolls over into another year. So I was very pleased to be able to negotiate that. And where we are now is the most incredible people flow, because of course everybody has to go to the grocery store, and Food Line is one of the few in town, so it's a natural gathering place for folks, and our business has just skyrocketed.
Yeah, I was at the grand opening. Folks were excited. For folks who aren't aware of what Second Bloom does, can you explain to them? Because it plays an important function in this community, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Back in the 80s, an agency arose, the Family Violence and Rape Crisis Organization, FVRC. But unfortunately, there were some funding issues, and there were other things that caused it to later be taken down as a lead agency for domestic violence and sexual abuse. The new agency that rose up was named after the thrift store in a way. It's a double entendre in that it talks about the clothes being used clothing, which is now utilized again, so it's blooming again. And by the same token, the domestic violence survivors are capable of blooming again in new relationships outside of the one that that contains violence from which they were escaping.
And the reason I asked you those questions because it was an important part of what you were doing once you left being mayor. Mentioned citizens reached out to you and say, "Hey, Cindy, you need to run again." That may be the way the conversation starts, but why do they feel that you need to be mayor again? What are some of the specifics?
Although they didn't go into specifics, there were certain people that talked about my ability to be able to utilize diplomacy. I utilize diplomacy both respecting the speakers before town meetings, the town commissioners themselves, people at Chatham Park. So it has been a part of my law practice as well as my religious belief, because I'm a member of the Quaker Church, to try to bring people together in a peaceful resolution of conflict. And it has been just a real pleasure to be able to say that the whole tenor of town board meetings took on a new tone under my leadership as mayor in 2015 through 2019. And so I think people, after all of the divisiveness in Pittsboro and the nation as a whole, with regard to the monument, with regard to masking, with regard to educational opportunities, it just felt to people that we were ready for some solid unity and growing Pittsboro back to the family-friendly and wonderful place that we have always known.
Okay, so one of the popular questions always asked somebody running for a political position is, what are the big issues that you see for the community? So what are the biggest issues that you see for Pittsboro? I think you mentioned some of them, but can you just elaborate more and address how you would, besides just getting more cooperative and more diplomatic solutions to them, how you would address those concerns?
Everybody's first issue is water. Water quality is the big issue here. If people know nothing more about town government, they certainly know the water issue. And, you know, municipal government can be very discouraging in a way, because it takes a long time to get anything done. And that is not a reflection on the government, it's a reflection on the acceptance of the issue, how you deal with it. And with the water quality issue, it's not only taken on that, but it's also taken on all the governmental entities that are involved in water quality. So there are federal issues, there are state issues, there are local issues. And so in 2015, when I came into the mayorship, one of the things we struggled with was, how do we prepare the people of Pittsboro for the idea that we have now found out that the water contains these unregulated chemicals. At first, the town administration then was not very interested in taking this to the public, because after all, town Pittsboro charges for the water, and when you charge for something, you don't want anyone to think that it's inappropriate or unhealthy or any of the other things. And technically, the water plant here in Pittsboro was complying with all the then present state laws. These unregulated chemicals, however, were testing at the universities in high levels, at Duke, at NC State. Both of those departments came and did monitoring and scientific experiments, and not only did we have a tremendous amount of these unregulated chemicals, but we also were finding out how carcinogenic they were. So that's the first issue. There is a $3.4 million improvement that has been started, not yet completed, but should be by the end of the year, to the water plant that is going to create a new carbon filtration system. And that will remove a portion of the unregulated chemicals. It will remove the PFOS and PFOA, but it will not remove the 1,4-dioxane, which is probably the more severe cancer risk. And that is the chemical that was released upstream from Burlington and Greensboro. Greensboro, I believe, was the prime discharger this past summer, when a big swath of chemical came down the Haw River. And we are the first drinkers south of these municipalities. And we are in the prime danger of ending up with these in our water system. It's very expensive to remove 1,4-dioxane from the water system, and the only guaranteed way of doing that is through the use of reverse osmosis. In order to put reverse osmosis in the plant here in Pittsboro, it would cost a monumental amount of money, much more than the $3.4 million to insert this carbon filtration system. And so one of the things that we've got to do is we've got to do infrastructure planning. We have got to get our sewer and our water systems in a position where not only can they handle the growth for the sake of Chatham Park, but they can handle the growth for the sake of Legacy Pittsboro. It's very important that we understand that Chatham Park came here for a reason. They came here because it's a beautiful, warm, friendly, welcoming town. And yes, they are going to add a tremendous amount of population to that town. But my first job, I see as mayor, is to preserve Legacy Pittsboro, preserve the small business, preserve the friendliness of the people, and to give us the credit where credit is due for being such a wonderful community that other people would want to come here and purchase 7,200 acres to make one of the largest developments on the East Coast.
Yeah, I saw you out at the Mosaic performance this past weekend. They dedicated the soundstage in memory of Tommy Edwards, who passed away a few months ago, a legend in bluegrass. What are your feelings about what you've seen Chatham Park do? What could they be doing better? What could you as mayor be doing better to you mentioned Legacy Pittsboro, to bringing them and coexisting or intertwining better with Legacy Pittsboro?
Well, first of all, the development was approved before I became mayor. It was approved in March of the year that I became mayor in December. And so what I was presented with was a development which had been approved but had not yet had all the specifics that were going to have to be regulations and codified things that would actually address life in that development. So what we did was we started with what were 14 additional elements, and we defined those things that they had to do. Chatham Park had to do with trees and buffers and environmental matters and wastewater and stormwater, all those wonderful details of a development. And indeed, oftentimes the devil is in the details. So the acreage was then divided into areas. They were referred to as small areas, and those small area plans were to come before the board and were going to be approved chunk by chunk, bit by bit, so that we could see how the whole thing fit together. Unfortunately, Chatham Park has taken 11 of these small area plans and has presented them just recently to the board. And so they're no longer small areas, and they're being asked to consider such large chunks at a time that I don't think the board was really prepared for the idea that so much was going to be coming in such large, sort of unmanageable sections.
So are they 11 individual chunks that happen to be all coming at the same time, or are they 11 chunks that got grouped together in one big amoeba?
The latter.
The latter.
It's 11 small chunks that were put together in one large area plan, I will call it. Communication has been good between the two entities, between the town and Chatham Park officials, but I do think that it could have been better. There have been a number of occasions on which important things were seemingly decided before they actually came to the board. And part of that may be some of the prior staff members. You know, we have had a tremendous turnover in staff. We have a new town manager who, quite frankly, is absolutely excellent from all I can see. I've had a few dealings with him. He is from Moore County, from Southern Pines, and he has come in the last year and made vast improvements in the town's communication with Chatham Park. The Chatham Park, though, I think is tiring in this process of doing all these infrastructure things. And the last one on the list, the only unapproved additional element now, is affordable housing. And this has been a real struggle because at first, Chatham Park came to us when I was still mayor and said, you know, we haven't had really truly affordable housing in this community, even before Chatham Park was approved. And we don't see why we should have to solve a problem that was already there before we came. And I think the whole idea of a community should be working together on problems, not necessarily saying, well, you did this and you did that, and therefore we're not going to take any part in it. Back some time ago, Chatham Park came to me one day and they said, you know, we would really like to get to a point where it's not us and them, or Legacy Pittsboro and Chatham Park. We want us to be a we. And I said that that is certainly something that I would like for us to do. Let us speak together as a whole community, as a community that's trying to better things from the presence of trees in their subdivision to clean water to drink and wastewater facilities that are absolutely state of the art. And to some extent, Chatham Park has done that, but in some important respects, like affordable housing, they have not. One of the most egregious things about Chatham Park's proposal for affordable housing has been the idea that they've asked for a very low percentage, only 5% of the 22,000 houses that they have the permission to build. And they've also asked that the affordable housing be allowed to be off-site. In other words, not on the 7,200 acres that's owned by Chatham Park. They want the affordable housing elsewhere. When in truth of fact, it's possible to create affordable housing right within a community and have it not be any visibly different from well-to-do housing or expensive housing. And there are some subdivisions that have managed to do that. And it's a matter of smaller footprint. It's a matter of perhaps less fancy amenities of some sort. And it is possible to have things in a solid subdivision without making a distinction or a project or an area designated as affordable housing.
What other issues do you see besides the ones that you've currently mentioned?
The environment is of particular concern to me, and I have long tried to get Chatham County, Pittsboro in particular, to think about more environmentally friendly things to do in our town. Our footprint is pretty small until we start taking Chatham Park in, but our public works staff, I know, works very diligently, but I would like to see less herbicide and pesticides used and sprayed in our town, partly for our health, partly for our animals' health. And I guess I'm famous for taking my chocolate lab all around town on walks, and that's sort of my way of checking in with people. I stop at the barber shop, and I stop at the bakery, and ask people how they're doing. And one of the things that I was able to do during my administration was to go to the Mayor's Climate Change Conference in Chicago in 2018. It was the most amazing experience. Got to hear a number of speakers. It was put on by the citizens of Chicago. Rahm Emanuel was the mayor at that time, and President Obama came and spoke to us. Former President Obama came and spoke to us about the importance of climate change initiatives. And I would like, even though we're a small town, I would like to be able to get things done in Pittsboro that could really make a difference. The herbicides and pesticides are one of them. Looking at plastics at the grocery store, I spoke to the folks at Food Line, and they had no interest in changing over from plastic to paper or to charging people for plastic bags like some communities have done. And I think we all care enough about this community and look along the roadsides and see what's there. And for the most part, it's plastic bags that is the trash that is not going to disintegrate. And that's the kind of legacy we don't need to leave.
Taking the time off that you did you see that as being a benefit and making you a stronger candidate this time around going in for running again for mayor? What were some of the benefits of it? You've kind of been not exactly an outsider, but you've been outside of the leadership position within the government. So what things have the last few years when you haven't been mayor given you an insight into?
Well, I think it doesn't hurt to take a step back. Sometimes you can get so totally immersed in something that you truly can't see the forest from the trees. And once I got out of the position and watched other people dealing with the same problems that I had dealt with, it became clearer to me that leadership has lots of different aspects to it. It has additional work with the county elected officials. It has additional communication with the citizens of the town. I think one of the things that I'm astounded by right now, because we're into early voting, is how few people understand really how the footprint of Pittsboro is. It's there are 3,400 voters in the town of Pittsboro, and yet folks think that just because they have a Pittsboro address, that makes them eligible to vote, and that is simply not the case. So it's communication about who we are and what we are, and who can have input to the government. It's a very important thing to communicate well. And I must say that during the water crisis this past summer, very few people understood that this dangerous chemical was coming down the Hall River. Instead, the town of Pittsboro put it on their website, and the town of Pittsboro put it on their Facebook page. And there are a lot of us that don't look at those on a regular basis. So one Sunday afternoon, I went out in our community and started telling folks about the dangers of this chemical coming downstream towards us. And I especially chose the families on my street and on the small neighborhoods near my personal residence that had children. Because to me, the most compelling part of all of this environmental concern, climate change as well as the environmental aspects of Chatham Park, the greatest concern for me is the children. The children will carry on our legacy here, and we've simply got to make this the healthiest and safest community we can for them.
Question I never liked when I ran for school board was, why should I vote for you instead of the other person? So I'm going to rephrase that question. I don't want to ask about the other person. The question is, and you mentioned there's like about 300 new voters in the Pittsboro area. So what can you say to those new voters and the legacy voters about why they should vote for Cindy again?
Well, I think that my service from 2015 to 2019 speaks for itself. There were many people that might not have agreed with the decisions that were made at that time, but they always admired the way in which it was done. It was done with transparency. It was done with honesty. It was done out of listening to the citizens of Pittsboro and then acting. And I think that is the main reason. Now, for the folks that have just moved in here, they don't know about that time and the job that I did for 4 years. But they certainly know from listening to others in the community that it was a wonderful experience to be at a town board meeting. We had participation by citizens, not only in citizen comment period, but we had Girl Scout troops and Boy Scout troops coming to help lead the Pledge of Allegiance, helping to fulfill their badge requirements about learning about local government. And I think that there was left a very satisfactory concept that with Cindy Perry as the mayor, you were going to get a straight shot. You were going to be understood, listened to, and hopefully it turned out the way you wanted it to. And if it didn't, it was, here's another issue. The mayor does not vote, and so except in the case of a tie. So I was not a voting elected official. I was one that tried to gather people together and hopefully reach the right conclusion.
So it sounds like you credit yourself as one of your accomplishments being a consensus builder. Is that
Absolutely.
Correct? All right. Cindy, I appreciate you doing this, taking this afternoon, a Saturday afternoon, actually a fantastic Saturday afternoon, great weather. Is there anything else that we need to cover? Do you want to just, anything else that you'd like to finish up and let the folks out there looking at this video know about the election? Again, you mentioned early elections. It's been less than 200 folks. Elections coming up. Why don't you bring us home here?
Well, I have been at the polls since the first day of early voting, October 14th. And so we have been there every day for the last week and 2 days. And I thought, quite frankly, this being a Saturday, and this being a beautiful Saturday, as Jean said, that we would have a nice flood of early voters. So the thing I'll leave you with is that please go vote. A lot of people say if you don't vote, you can't complain. And I won't say that, because I would like to think that we can work better together to make this a wonderful community to live in. But I will say that there are important issues on the table. Some of them are the same issues that were left on the table when I turned the mayorship over to Jim Noss. And I believe that we need to continue to work together. We need a strong consensus at the election and a strong consensus to carry through the next 2 years, so that we can say at the end of those 2 years that we have accomplished a number of things that are just of vital importance to the town of Pittsboro.
All right, and I know people just seeing this part of it will go, well, fantastic, Cindy, I want to go out and vote, but the question is, where do I go out to do early voting?
And this is important. I had a poll worker this morning who searched and searched for where to go to help me at the table outside the polls. And she stopped and asked a number of people on the street, well, where's the voting place? There is one voting place, and it is at the Chatham County Agricultural Conference Center. And that's, of course, on West Street, past the community college, past the Scout Hut. The next turn on the right is this beautiful building for the Chatham County Agricultural Offices. And you'll follow the signs around there. It is a big enough space that you need not worry about COVID. Masks are required, but you can also do curbside voting. And so if you have either a fear about COVID or a disability that doesn't prevent you from going comfortably into the voting place, please pull up to the curb, and a voting official will come out and assist you with casting your ballot. It's a short ballot. It's just 2 persons running for mayor and 3 people running for 2 seats on the town commissioners. And it doesn't take but just a very few minutes to exercise the most important right of being a citizen of the United States.
And if people want more information about you, Miss Cindy, where do they need to reach? It sounds like you're going to be working pretty much all of the early voting, so they can stop by at the Ag Center. But if they can't stop by the Ag Center before voting, where else can they find more information about you?
My daughter is helping me with a Facebook page it's called Cindy Perry for Mayor 2021, and I must admit I'm not high on technology, so I needed a little help with that from my kids. So that's where you can find me. Don't forget that the early voting allows you to be able to register and vote at the same time, and that's 8 o'clock till 5, Monday through Friday, and next Saturday, which is the street fair, 8 o'clock through 3 o'clock to do your early voting, and then you can come over to the street fair. I'll be there too, so come and look for my booth. I've got stickers and buttons and can talk with you more about additional issues that you may have concern about. I want to know what you think and what you are concerned with. So
Right.
thank you.
Cindy, thank you very much. And folks, again, the street fair next Saturday, which is fantastic because we didn't have it this past year because of COVID, and you now know how to reach out to Miss Cindy. Thank you very much, Miss Cindy.
Thank you, Jean.
Yep, you're welcome. Bye.